last week on the Al Nicoletti Show. Without further ado, let's welcome them to the show. Mandy, Keith, welcome.
Thank you, Al.
Thanks, Al. Thanks for having us. We're super excited to be here. You can only learn so much until you dive in. Dive in, and that's where the real education happens.
Sure. What have you seen be the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to having the buy and holds?
Well, the buy and holds are good to build the wealth on the back end. We have a mixture of like long-term rentals, short-term rentals, and mid-term rentals. We're not like stuck just in short-term rentals.
And are you guys doing the rehabbing as well if you get into buying one of those properties?
So like our most recent one, we bought 8 houses on one lot and we rehabbed all of them, and now we're renting them out long-term rentals.
What have been some of your favorite marketing strategies?
Location. You can market location, and then obviously being in Florida, the heat, the weather, pools are a very big component to people wanting to come down. Offering different amenities too to make anything easier for people traveling.
But now we're launching the REI Connection, and that's going to be our platform where you can put all of your off-market properties.
Very cool. So it's going to be like a just a software kind of thing, right? Is a community.
We refer to it as similar to an off-market MLS. There's 10,000 plus users already on the platform, and it's global, so it's not just a local thing.
Sure.
It's a global platform.
What have been some of the challenges that you two have seen in this kind of market right now?
People are so stuck in their house with insurance costs going up. A lot of these houses are in default and they can't even cash flow as rentals.
A lot of that has to do with the insurance and taxes continuing to rise. The insurance is a true crisis.
But then on the flip side too, now you're getting into the pad split loans, which is really unique. It's very niche.
So we just got approved for the pad split loans. So,
Yesterday.
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
perfect.
You're the first to hear
it's
about
like,
it.
This
Exclusive.
Is exclusive, like yesterday.
We got the mugs. So this is yours. Keith's? Look at this, Keith. There you go.
Awesome.
These are great. Al, thank you so much. We really appreciate coming out here. It's always great hanging out with you, getting to chat.
Yeah.
It's a one-on-one time together. Super stoked for our new swag.
Yes, definitely.
Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Of
Thanks.
course.
See you guys.
And we're live, everybody. It's Wednesday night in the Al Nicoletti studio. Thank you all for joining. And if you missed any of that episode last week, go back, check that out. Dive in on this. Dive in on these episodes when you can really take the time to hear what these guests are going through every single day, what they're doing, their personal stuff, their business stuff, everything culminates into this big picture for all these people, and you don't want to miss it. Scan the QR code at the top of the screen. That's where you're going to find everything on the social media for the show, YouTube, Facebook, you name it, everything that's out there. And I am excited to have this guest on today. Tony Javier is going to talk about the TV space, TV ads, and 10X TV. I've heard all about it, but Tony is killing it with the TV ads. And I got to have somebody on the show that's going to dive in on this so we can learn how TV can translate to leads, to business, and beyond. So this is going to be an episode you definitely want to pay attention to. I got my laptop, my notes, my notepad. I'm ready to rock this thing, so let's do it. Hey everybody, my name is Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida, and welcome to the Al Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in their communities that educate, entertain, and inspire all things on Florida real estate and going beyond. Whatever industry it is, real estate adjacent, some form of that market, right? Branding, commercial, any type of thing in real estate. We want to provide guests that can help level up your business, level up your personal side, level up your family on how you can take your company and your business to the next level. On my show today, I got Tony Javier. I love this guy. Every time I see him at Family Mastermind, always got a smile on his face. I always have a smile on my face. Love seeing Tony, and he really brings an interesting niche with TV. And lately, I've heard a lot of different investors talk about how TV is working for them. And I know there's a lot of people that use inbound marketing leads, PPL, PPC. I've heard a lot of people say how, hey, TV is working. And so I saw Tony at Family and we're like, hey, we got to do this thing. This is a hot topic. So I'm excited to bring him on. So without further ado, let's welcome him to the show. Tony Javier, what's up, baby?
What is up, Al? Dude, bringing the energy, man. It's easy to smile when I'm around you. You just bring the energy and just fun to be around you, man.
Same here, man. I love your smile and I love being around you. And I love hearing what other people are talking about with your space, with your company, and how TV ads are translating to more business for people. And that's exciting to see the success side of this. Tony, for those that don't know who you are, just a brief intro of Tony Javier and what you guys have been doing at 10X TV.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started in the space in 2001. So ironically, I bought an info product off of TV commercials called No Down Payment with Carlton Sheets. So for those that are a little bit older, may know Carlton Sheets. I think he stopped educating, gosh, sometime in the 2000s. He passed away a few years ago, but he was really big in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, just promoting how you could buy properties with no money down. And so pulled out my credit card and bought the $200 course and just started buying properties. And, at the time I was waiting tables. I was in school actually. And I ended up dropping out of school with 9 hours left to graduate to start to not start the business, but to spend more time in the business. And I thought to myself, I'll go back. I'll go back and finish my degree. And here we are 23 years later with no degree, a few hours left still. And, but these days, I don't know that you really need a college degree, and, we won't go down that rabbit hole too much. But real estate has been great. I bought over 1,000 properties using none of my own money. Some of them I used my own money, but most of them I used other people's money. Still do that till today. And, a lot has happened in 23 years. First 10 years of my business, on paper, everything looked pretty good, but really I was working just way too many hours, 60 to 80-hour weeks. I didn't have much of a life. I would I'd grind again, 60, 80 hours a week, weekends, didn't socialize too much, and just made a lot of wrong mistakes. I think a lot of us have been there where we get into something, we get into it for money and we get into it for time. And what happens? We have no time and we have no money, right?
Yeah.
And so I made a big shift back in about 2010, 2011. And I said, you know what? I'd fired my staff a couple times. And I said, I just have to do things smarter, right? So I went to my sister and I said, I'm just sick of dealing with, the wrong people. And a lot of it was my fault looking back. I tried to pay too cheap of a price. I didn't train them very well. I mean, there's a lot of things that I didn't do right, but things happen for reasons. So hit my sister up and she basically ran the company she was working for. And I said, hey, if I bring you on, do you think you can take me where I want to go? And I set out my goals. It's like, here's what I want to do. And she looked me in the eye and she said, there's no doubt in my mind I can do that. So that was, again, 2010, 14 years ago. And that's when things turned around. I was able to, within about 3 to 4 years, actually step out of my business, move to San Diego, where I currently live, and my operation is in Wichita, Kansas. And things just started lining up after that. After you start surrounding yourself with good people, you start making, higher quality, high level decisions. Things just kind of start falling into place.
Mm-hmm.
And so in 2012 is when I discovered TV commercials. I actually went to it's kind of a long story that I'll try and keep short. I went to a networking event. I met a guy named Brian, and Brian ended up kind of like, really following up with me a lot. He was a young kid. He was like driven. He was like wanting kind of mentoring. So I ended up mentoring him, ended up becoming good friends with him. So about 6 months after I met him, he's like, hey, I met this guy named Cody. Let's go. He's actually having a poker game. Would you like to come? Because he knew I liked to play poker. So we go into the basement of Cody's house and I see these two guys across the way and I'm like, I recognize those guys. Wait a second. I recognize those guys from TV commercials, right? So they each had their own TV commercial. So at that point, I'm like, kind of like, celebrity struck, whatever you want to call it, because these guys are on TV. I'm thinking, man, I'm hanging out with these guys playing poker or whatever. So I ended up sitting next to one of them kind of on purpose. His name was Chad. And I was like, Chad, man, what do tell me about TV. And I expected him to say what most people think. Most people, when they think about TV, they think it's for big brands. It's way too expensive. and it's just for branding. And I expected him to say, man, it's just really expensive. We do okay with it. We brand our business. But when I started asking him about it, his eyes lit up and he's like, dude, we do millions and millions of dollars a year from TV. And he's like, that is the only marketing channel we have to do. And he just started explaining all the benefits of TV, about how, the credibility standpoint, about how, other people see it and then they tell their friends if they're looking, because he had a construction business. So people were like, hey, I'm looking to remodel my house. Or like, oh, go to Southwest Remodeling and check them out. I see them on TV. And so, I started asking him a lot of questions, and he goes, hey, why don't you call my media guy, Drew, and Drew can, tell you kind of what he did for me and, tell you about the TV space. So Monday morning, I called Drew. I said, Drew, heard you're the TV guy. Tell me all about this thing. And so he's like, I'll tell you what. He's like, I think I know what your demographic is. I'm going to go to the stations. I'm going to negotiate some rates for you. I'll bring it back to you. If you like it, let's go. And so it was about a week later, calls me up. He's like, hey, man, got some good news. I got some really good rates. He's like, for $3,000, I can get you, I think it was like over 300 commercials a month. And I was like, are you kidding me? That's insane. Like, I thought he would come back with like, $10,000. You get like 100 commercials, because I'd heard that it was really expensive. So anyway, so I wrote the scripts. We kind of worked on it together, produced the commercial. Up and running in 30 days. And my first month, I made $35,000 from that $3,000 ad spend, and totally just off and running from there. So 12 years later, it's still my number one lead source. We get tons of credibility and exposure from TV. We have a ton of other marketing channels. It helps every single marketing channel that we do. And it's just been a game changer. And it was kind of at that time, again, I felt like I needed to start making better and smarter decisions. Started with hiring, then it started with, other decisions that I made with working less and automating things and creating better systems. And then led into, how do I market smarter, right? How do I get people calling me instead of me having to reach out to them? So that's kind of how the TV thing started. And here's where we are today. And I just love talking about TV because I feel like it's one of those things where people still think it's a branding play. People think their business isn't big enough for it. They think it's way too expensive. And also the big misnomer that people think is that everything's gone to streaming. But if you look at the data for our demographic, which is older people with houses that are less expensive, they're still watching 2.5 hours of TV every single day. 2.5 hours of TV, right? And that's probably on the low end. I bet it's even higher than that. Because when I used to go into houses, gosh, it's been almost 10 years since I went into a house with a seller. Guess what? Their TV was on. They're just watching TV during the day, hanging out, and that's just how they grew up. That was back in the day, that was a privilege, right? Back in the I can't remember the exact years that TV got really popular. Was it 50s or something, 50s, 60s? That was a huge privilege. And so even to this day, older people, our demographic, are watching TV and they haven't quite gone to streaming yet. So big proponent of TV. And I just think it helps everything that you do in your business.
Yeah. And people are watching TV, whether they're watching sports, games, any types of news stations. I mean, it's always running. And some people just keep their TV on in the background, and you never know. They're selective hearing and they hear something and they look over and they're interested in it, right? So TV is on for hours upon hours. And even I've even seen some TV ads with investors and agents that are that have their ads out on TV. So people are starting to do more of that. Two concepts before we dive into TV, because I think this is really, really cool. And I'm almost wondering, maybe that's where you got the 10X for the name of the company, is because you put 3,000 in and then you made the 30,000 and you're like, well, I just 10X my money right there. So I don't know.
Yeah, that is part of it. So, I try not to tell people, try not to talk about return on investment too much as far as that's concerned, just because I don't want too high expectations. But you're right. There were people that were getting the same results. So when I started sharing my results or my formula, because you have to pick the right stations. You have to, we tested so many scripts. We had this great formula we had tweaked over time. So when we started showing it to other people and helping other people, they were getting the similar results where they were spending $5,000 a month and getting $50 to $100,000 back in return.
Mhm.
So that is part of why we switched it to 10x TV. But here's the real slogan: is you can reach 10 times more people, 10 times faster, and 10 times easier. And I can go over the numbers on it, but the cost per impression for TV compared to like direct mail, I'll kind of give you a comparison. So if you send out 1,000 postcards, which we still do postcards, you're going to spend $500 for that same 1,000 people that you're going to hit with TV is only $5. So it's actually, you're getting 100 times more impressions with TV. So there's a lot of different ways you can spend 10x TV, but people are getting 10 times return on their investment, but you're definitely hitting 10 times more people, 10 times faster with 10 times more ease than most other marketing channels.
Yeah, I love that. And, two things you talked about in that opening of how you got here, your journey, no degree. And there's a lot of people that go through that as well, right? Like there's a lot of people in the industry that are successful like yourself that are doing big things that don't even have the degree, right? So whether you do or don't doesn't really matter. It's a matter of how you're going to apply yourself and put your surround yourself around the right people, but really have that mindset to get to that next level. And like you said, surrounding yourself around the right people, when you can do that, you level yourself up. So because you did that, you leveled up. And that's what we all do on a daily basis, being in Family Mastermind, being in all the groups. We're always surrounded by people that are like-minded and doing things on a high level. And so I just wanted to point that out, which is two principles of making sure like you're leveling up right there. That's it. So for you, Tony, how are you getting TV to, how should I say, how do you get TV to get motivated sellers to find people?
Yeah. So when I started on TV, that was a little bit of a different, not a greatly different time, but a little bit different. But any which way, the concept really is still the same today as it was 10 years ago. And the fact that you just have to buy the right shows, you have to call the right stations to get to those shows. You have to know what good pricing is. Because here's the thing. We've had people come to us and be like, "Hey, we tried this TV thing," and that's a huge advantage of TV, right? So it is a high barrier of entry. So if someone wants to do it on their own, they can, but there's so many steps to the process. I actually have some really smart people that have come to us that said, "Hey, we tried this on our own and we just couldn't figure it out." It's either because they were given so many different options for shows. They were given, like I mentioned earlier, a quote for $10,000 for 100 commercials, when we know if someone spends $10,000, we can get them probably closer to 1,000 commercials a month. They've got to script the commercial and know what to say because you only have 30 seconds to do it to get the message across. And there's other things. What phone number do you use? Do you drive them to a website or do you drive them to call you? Do we use our business name? Do we use, there's so many different pieces to the puzzle that you have to put together in order to make a good TV commercial. So if someone can get on TV and figure it out, they have advantage over the competition. In fact, we've had, since we started, it was actually about, I think a year or 2 years ago, I started getting a little concerned because we had like 5 other people that had basically duplicated what we had done. And I was like, man, we're getting a lot of competition. I was getting a little concerned. But 2 things. One is, even when we had those 5 people on the air, we were still getting deals that didn't affect us. And today, 5 years later, there might be one of those that are still running commercials and probably not doing it very consistently, right? Because they couldn't figure it out. And so the concept behind it is basically doing 30-second commercials where you get motivated sellers to call you. And the great thing about that is TV is, people say it's a shotgun approach, which it is, but you're not only hitting the people that want, you're hitting the people that don't want to sell, obviously, but you're also still hitting those people that may be on list. But the beautiful thing is you're also hitting those people that aren't quite yet on the list, right? So if you know much about real estate investing, you know that people buy lists and they target the same list, the probates, the the high equity list, the pre-foreclosure list, right? Well, guess what? Everybody else is hitting those. But what if you could hit those people before they get on those lists? What
Mhm.
happens is, and what we've seen is a lot of people will call us and only us because they saw us on TV, right? And for many different reasons. One, because they're not getting hit yet with so many messages. So when they see ours, it's like, oh, okay, I think I'm ready to sell. We're in front of them and have been in front of them many times throughout the month and the year, and they don't they don't really have to like pre-qualify us. They know because we're on TV, we're willing to put our name and face out there, so we're probably credible. We're spending the money to be on TV, which they think we're spending way more than we are. Um, and so their walls are down compared to someone that just texts them out of the blue, right?
Mhm.
Um, so that's kind of how we've taken TV commercials and just using it for our business. And it's been such a game changer for us, not only getting us the leads directly that we can convert, but also when people call us from our postcards, they're like, yeah, I got a stack of postcards and we called you because out of all these people, because we know you're on TV and we've seen you throughout the years. And then same thing with radio. We do radio as well, and we help people with radio too. And people will hear our hear radio, but then when they call us, they'll be like, yeah, I heard your radio, but then also I've heard your TV throughout the years. So it just really works really well with the other marketing channels to help with the credibility when they see our other messages, and just really helps bring everything together from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, it seems like it really helps make that connection when they're starting to get the mailers or the calls or whatever other messaging methods you're using to basically say, "Wait, I've seen that guy before. I've seen him somewhere. I've seen him on TV. I heard the radio ad." So I think that it sounds like TV is that great component to put yourself out there first, and then all these other components just really help drive that home to say, "Hey, I'm going to give him a call." Um, how important is the messaging in that 30-second commercial? Like what have been some of the best messages that you've heard people like communicate in these TV ads?
Yeah, so you only have 30 seconds, like I said. So, it's kind of a long time, but it's kind of not at the same time, if that makes sense. So you can get a decent amount in the 30 seconds if you do it right. But again, you only have 30 seconds. So the thing that a lot of marketers get wrong, there's a lot of things they get wrong. I've been studying marketing for 20 plus years. When the internet exploded and people were sending had these email lists. I was literally on almost every big marketer's email list. So I just ate it up for many, many years. And so, the things that people get wrong. So I'll give you an example. So like, have you ever seen a billboard where it kind of catches your attention, but you literally have no idea what they do, right? It's like,
Mhm.
something like, what was it? There's one here in San Diego. It had two words on it. It gets your attention, and I'd driven by it many times, and I'd see the two words. It was Roto Rooter. They had the little logo really small, and it said something like, it wasn't got poop, but it was something like random like that. That gets your attention,
Yes.
and they just have their little logo like very small in the bottom right corner. And the only reason that I noticed that logo is because I'm a marketer, and I was driving by it, and I'd driven by it many times, and it's right around the corner from my house. And I was like, wait a second, what company is that? And then I looked in the bottom right corner, and I saw their logo, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense. And then, so thinking about that, if and hold on, let me transition to somebody who does it right. Geico. You've seen a Geico TV commercial.
Yes.
Geico has it down. They have a gecko, which you don't have to have something like that, but they have something that catches your attention with a gecko, something you remember. And then when at the end of the commercial, they say, if you're thinking about, or give us 15 minutes and we'll save you 15%, up to 15% on your car insurance. And they have geico.com really big on the bottom. They have it right. A lot of these big companies and even smaller companies, they have these great messages, but then they miss something. They either miss putting a call to action, they miss that billboard that I mentioned. They didn't have a phone number. They didn't have a website. Now, granted, I could go Google them, but what happens when you Google them? You're going to find all their other competitors, right? So for me, I want people contacting me directly. So your message has to tell them what the benefit is to them. A lot of people like to talk about themselves and how they've been in business so long and all these things. People don't care about that. People don't care. I mean, that could help that say, I've been in business since 2001, but what's in it for them, right? What are you going to be able to do for them, right? So you're going to be able to give them cash. They're going to be able to not have any inspections. You're going to buy their property as is, right? There's points that you have to hit that people understand what the benefit is and why they should call you. And then you have to have a good call to action at the end. So at the end of my commercials, I always say, if you're even thinking about selling your house, and the reason that I do the exit the same every time is so they know that it's me every time that I end the commercial. So it's, if you've been thinking about selling your house, give us a call at 685-SELL. That's 685-7355. And I have a phone number that's very easy to remember. I say it every time. So when they hear me say that line, when they see the phone number, they know it's me, and they don't confuse it with other competitors, right?
Yeah.
So that's just a few things that I feel like a lot of people get wrong with marketing, commercials, billboards, and things of that nature that you really have to dial in that 30 second span.
Yeah. As soon as you were talking about the phone numbers, I'm thinking about listening to some of the ad commercials on XM. When they'll actually like repeat it 3 times. And so those kinds of things, like you just hear it over and over and over and over again, and they're easy numbers, right?
Yep.
So like you're talking about, use easy numbers, big font, and make sure you have your messaging at the end. Huge tips. So for anybody that wants to get into that, these are some great tips for you. Tony, I know there's a lot of investors or different people in business that really want to stand out, and they have a niche and they want to crush it in their market. How are some of the people that you're working with using TV to crush that niche in that market?
When you say niche, you're talking about real estate investing in particular, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so first of all, so we have over 100 real estate investors right now running TV commercials with us, but we also my agency already also has about, I think it might be a little over 100 other businesses that run TV commercials with us, attorneys, doctors, med spas, things of that nature. So what it comes down to is from a real estate investing standpoint, which I'm guessing a good part of the audience is probably in the real estate space.
Yep.
They're using it to, as I mentioned, to get leads directly, right? So our message is pretty direct of why they should call us. And the great thing about TV and the thing that people don't understand is that it actually works very quickly. I would say, when I launched myself, I got results in the first month. When I went to a bunch of friends of mine, when I decided to show people what I was doing and help them out, they were getting very similar results where they were getting multiple deals in their first month. There are some people that it takes like 3 to 6 months to start really cranking and getting deals. But if you think about it, I mean, for the type of media and the type of marketing you're doing, it's really worth it to wait that out. If it doesn't crank in the first month, right? So really it's direct leads, it's branding, right? So it's you getting your name out there and really solidifying that you're the authority in the market. It's helping other forms of marketing, as I'd already mentioned. It is helping with things like private money. In fact, I had a guy, oh gosh, what's it been? 10 years ago, 8 years ago, it's 2014. This guy walked into our office and he's like, "Hey, I've seen you guys on TV, just wondering, like, I kind of want to get into real estate. I don't really want to buy houses. Like, can you guys help me?" We're like, "Yeah, we've got this private lending program." We tell him all about it. And long story short, within 12 months, he has over $1 million invested with us. And I noticed when I got on TV and I started talking to private investors, so we have private investors that would refer people to us. My CPA would refer people to us. Family members would refer people to us. And so I noticed when I got on TV that when I was having conversations with people that I know, one of the first things they started saying is, "Oh yeah, I've seen you guys." Because I'd either either they'd put it together beforehand or I'd start talking about it, and they'd be like, "Oh, professional home buyers, we've seen you guys on TV." And once they understand that, the conversation was so much easier compared to when I wasn't on TV and they had no idea who I was. I really had to spend more time building that trust. Um, and it's that way with sellers. It's that way with um, vendors. When you're dealing with contractors, and they just treat you differently, right? Like, it's for some reason when you're on TV and they know you're on TV, they just treat you a lot differently. And this is a good one. So you guys, Dean Rogers and Family
Oh,
Mastermind, right?
love Dean. Yes.
So good friend of mine. He's actually one of the first that I reached out to when I started doing this. I said, "Hey, Dean, I know you've got a great business here." And he's like, "I've been looking for another marketing channel." He's like, "Yeah, let's give it a shot." And he's crushing it. So his first year, he did over $500,000 in profits from his ads. And I can say this because he's done videos and stuff about it. So done over $500,000 in his first year on like an $80,000 ad spend. So not quite 10x, but still good.
Still good.
In his second year, so when he started, he had a small meetup group, right? And he wasn't getting a lot of traction. And once he got on TV, he's like, people started seeing our name, and we started just growing our RIA group. And now he has 400 person, yearly or bi-yearly events that he does with his RIA group. But the cool thing is, his second year, he did over $1 million in extra assignment fees just from that group. Whereas before he wasn't doing much with it. So you ask, what are people doing with TV commercials? It's not only all those things that I said, but it's also things that they get outside of it, which is credibility to be able to, raise money and, start meetup groups and get people to bring deals to them and things of that nature. So as you can tell, I'm very passionate about TV, and there's just so many benefits of it. Like, if you talk about, direct mail, if you talk about PPC, there's only this much, right, that you have to work with. When you're talking about TV, there's just so many things that it opens up that I could just talk all day long about it.
Yeah. And like I was talking on the prelude for the show, there's a lot of investors that have started using TV to get leads. And it sounds like the ROI has been really high using TV versus other marketing channels. And you even talked about how the ROI is really solid with TV. Once you start getting to that point of having that return on investment, how do you get it to that autopilot phase?
Well, here's the good thing is, a lot of the times, because we have the formula, we've tested things for 12 years now. Once we set it up, it's like set it and forget it. So Dean, for instance, we started him 4 years ago on TV. It was right about 4 years ago. And he started crushing it right out of the gate. And he hasn't had to shoot a new commercial in 4 years. He's still running. And
Really?
he may have changed. We may have changed it for him recently, but I'm pretty sure what last time I asked him, it was about 6 months ago. He's like, "Dude, we're still running the same commercial." So he may be working with my team with a new commercial, but literally running the same commercial. For me, when I launched TV, it was at least 18 months. It's been a while ago, but I think I ran the same commercial for 18 months. And the only reason I changed it is I just wanted to freshen it up. I'm like, I haven't done, it's been 18 months since I've done a commercial. And I even looked at the calendar, and I was like, recently, this last week or two, and I'm like, man, what's it been, a year or so since I've done a new commercial? I'm like, maybe I should do a new one. But it's producing, right? So it's like, if you have something set up right, there's no reason to change it unless you just want to kind of tweak and test it. So we still, about once a year, we'll change our commercial just to see if it changes numbers much. But yeah, once you get it set up right, you really don't have to touch it much.
Yeah, that was something I was going to ask. Do you test different kinds of commercials? So do you record 3 of them and then you just try each one, maybe change it up a little bit just to see, hey, this was working one quarter, this was doing better the next quarter? Or it sounds like you're doing it kind of in a longer periods of time.
Yeah, it's usually a year to 18 months for me. If we launch someone on TV and they're like, "Hey, I'm not happy with the results within 90 days or something," we're like, "Okay, let's change up the commercial. Let's do something else." So I've tested, like for me, when before I started helping other people, I tested other things. I tested, it's like for instance, one thing I tested was I'm fairly monotone for the most part compared to a lot of people like you, Al, who are can be a little more animated, right? And so I went outside. I went outside my usual box and I tried a commercial where I was very like animated. Hey, this is Tony Javier with Professional Home Buyers. Instead of hey, this is Tony Javier with Professional Home Buyers. And I thought it was going to do well because I was more animated and people would be drawn to it more. But literally, like our commercial was doing well, and it just tanked our calls. Like literally overnight, we just saw our calls like drop dramatically. And we gave it a little bit and we're like, all right, we can't do this anymore. And we changed it back to the other commercial. So it's interesting, just little things like that and that we've tested and there's usually a rhyme or reason to it. So now that I think about it, or after I did it, I'm like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense because people that are selling to us, they're typically lower income. They're a little bit older. They're probably in a situation that they don't want to be in for whatever reason. Either they lost a parent or they didn't take care of their house for 30 years and they're in a situation where they just have to sell. And you're coming with this like energy. It's like you need to meet them a little bit more on their level. So that's one of the reasons people come to us is the data we have. So it's like, okay, when we coach people to do their commercials, we're not saying like, don't be yourself, but don't be too animated because we've tried that before and it literally just tanked. It tanked our commercials. So yeah, I mean, those are the things that we've tested throughout time and we continue to test. And actually, and another one I did during COVID, so 2000, what was it? 20, COVID was in 20. I think it was 20. It must have been the end of 20. When we were kind of in the thick of COVID, I changed it to we call it tough times commercial. And it actually still performs now because we switch it out every once in a while just to see if it's still performing. But it's a commercial that's basically like, hey, we know things are tough right now. You're going through tough times. And the last thing you want to do is to worry about, how you're going to sell your house and what repairs you need to do. And that commercial absolutely crushed it, did really well. So there, and we have some other clients that like to do some situational things, but for the most part, when someone comes to us, we take 90% of what we know has worked well, plug it in, and then we tweak that other 10% to their brand and maybe what they do. So we may add something like we buy multifamily properties as well as land, or we also speak Spanish, or you know what I'm saying? So like 90% of it is pretty much something that I know has worked either for me or for a lot of other clients before. And then that other 10% we may add and change a little bit just based on the client's business.
And you just brought up a great point. I was going to ask about this, which is, do you have different types of themes for your commercials? And it sounds like that one was a tough time commercial. So it sounds like you have an arsenal of different types of themes that you can implement and test to see if you can draw out a different kind of reaction. Is that what it sounds like you guys have that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If people look at our website, you can see the 6 different commercials that we put on our website. One of them's tough times. One of them is repairs costing you too much. Yeah, there's like different themes to every commercial. But what it comes down to is it's basically like you're in a situation you need to sell, and here's how we can help you.
Very cool. I think TV sounds great. I mean, it's working, right, for people. And the ROI seems to be there, and you're just getting your messaging out. You're getting that branding out, but that also the relatability too, so that people see you out there, then they see you somewhere else on another form of marketing. And it sounds like it's got that great connection vibe there for people that are using these marketing channels. Tony, it sounds like we could talk about TV for hours. Like TV sounds like there's so much to go into, but you also are an entrepreneur. Like this is your business, right? And so you've been able to see in terms of your business scaling back, probably scaling up. I mean, other types of ways that you can grow your business. What would you say are some of the most efficient ways you can scale your business?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, as I mentioned, I used to work 60 to 80-hour weeks. I'd literally get up sometimes at 4 o'clock in the morning, work until 10 o'clock at night, work Saturday, work Sunday. And I had a nice house with a pool, and I never used it. And my family would come over and use it, and I'd be inside working. I mean, that's like how bad it was, back in the day. And I say that because I've come so far from where that was. And if people do that, like, and they enjoy it, like, that's one thing. Like, for instance, Tony Robbins, that guy probably works 7 days a week, but he's high energy, he enjoys everything he does, and he's passionate about it, and everything lines up for him, right? But for the average person, 7 days a week is a lot. So part of my transition has been basically, how can I do things easier, smarter, and faster? So I went from working 60 to 80-hour weeks to now I work less than an hour on my real estate investing business, right? And I did that with people. So I mentioned hiring. My sister was the number one. Like, your first hire is the most important, because you're basically doubling your staff, you and another person, and you guys are the culture, right? And so that first hire is so important to make sure you're hiring the right person. So if you can get that first hire right and they can duplicate what you're doing, it just becomes easier to go find other people to continue to do the same thing. So I don't have a huge staff. I think we're somewhere to around 12, 15 staff members. We're very lean, very efficient. But what's interesting is that I used to work 60 to 8-hour weeks, and I made pretty good money. But now it's the other way around, where I don't work very much in my business and my income has just skyrocketed. And people as probably the number one thing that I would say. I don't use a lot of AI, but a lot of people are using AI and automations. We'd still do automate a lot of things. Like, if you look at our software, if you look at the things that we do, we really automate a lot of what we do. And then you mentioned a big key factor. So there's when someone asks me on a podcast or just randomly, whatever, like, if I could go back when I was 21 years old, starting my business, what would I do differently? And there's two things that I say. One is, I wish I would have started TV back then. I wish I would have known about it. And the second thing is, I wish I would have joined a mastermind group or hired a high level coach to coach me through the things that I needed to learn in that first 10 years. So I think surrounding yourself with the right people, with the right employees, with, even your friends, right? Like, choose your friends
Yes.
wisely, because
Yes.
you're going to become who they are. And then your peer group, just like, you and I just saw each other last week at Family Mastermind in Tampa. Like, that room is like just millionaires and multimillionaires and $100 million companies. Like, you hang around in that room, eventually you're going to level up just because you have no choice. Right. So gosh, there's so many things to scaling a business. And the thing that I would just say the most is, when you are looking at something, think about how little time you can put into something, but get the biggest results. And that's why I love TV, is the return on time. Once you get it set up, it plays in the background, you answer the calls and you do the deals. And so when someone brings me an opportunity, oh man, if I could go back starting day one, if I knew these principles, like, I would have so many opportunities brought to me. Like, I can't tell you how many multi-level marketing companies I jumped into and tried to make work just because I saw this, these shiny objects. But when you're disciplined and you can look at something and say, okay, if I'm going to take this on, calculate how much time am I going to put into it and what am I going to get back? And that doesn't mean you don't take on that opportunity. But now when I look at opportunities, I'm like, okay, I look at my team and I say, who on my team can take that on? If they can take on 90% of it, and I just have to take on maybe 5 or 10% of it, that's something I'm going to look at. But if it's something I have to be in for 40 hours a week to start a new business or to do anything new, I'm not interested in that anymore. And I think even going back from day one to have that mentality of protecting your time, I think is highly valuable to think about it that way. Even if you're making $10 an hour in your business, like, you still have to look at your time and say, man, my time's worth a lot of money. I'm going to protect it and work on the things that I like, the things that I'm good at, and the things that produce the most amount of money.
I love that. And I have to just say, Tony, it's one of the reasons I love being in the probate niche, right? Time, money. And then I explain to a lot of people that if you're doing this as a real estate side of it with probate, it's a huge opportunity. Some of these are the biggest spreads, right? So right there, exactly why you love being in TV. I love being in probate because I know I made a system out of it. I automated it and I know where the time is and the ROI is, right? And just a couple of things to back up. The first hire is the most important. Absolutely. 100%. So in my business, I have Christina on my team for the law firm. I always look for a Christina clone, right? Because it starts setting the trend in the culture, right? Between the two of us, we've grown from there. And now I'm looking for the clones, right? Because that's what's growing the business. And it really is the most important hire you can make in your business is that first one. And alignment, being surrounded by the right people goes back to the beginning, comes right back now. Like you said, being in family, being in a mastermind, being in these big groups, surrounding yourself with the right friends, right? This is something I talked about over the summer. Alignment has been a very big word for me, Tony, because I always reevaluate what my values, my vision, my beliefs are constantly. And am I with people that are in line with that, right? Because that changes your future. That changes your outlook and in your path. And you need to be aligned with the right people. And I think these points that you've made are really critical for your business. I think they can help people navigate through what it takes to run a successful business. And you've done that with your business. And I know one thing that I'd love to ask you is, what has been your secret to success?
Secret to success. I think I'm pretty fortunate from that standpoint because I was born with a lot of drive. Like even when I remember being 5 years old, my son right now is 5 years old and he is not very athletic. But at 5 years old, I was playing coach pitch. I was diving for balls and making diving catches. They called me a one-man team just because I would get all the hits. I'd make all the big plays. I just always had that drive. So luckily I was born with that drive and I've taken it to where it is today. But even if someone doesn't have drive, I think just having that tenacity to weather through the storm when shit's hitting the fan, just pushing through it, realizing that, and I wish I would have known this back then, but things always work out, right? Like when I was in 2009, when I mentioned I fired my staff and it'd been the second or third time I had done that, I was in such a dark mental state because I thought that business was supposed to be this. I thought it was supposed to be go up, go up, go up. I didn't realize it was just all kinds of roller coasters, and that's just the way it is, right?
Yes.
And I'm fortunate enough now to have many businesses. So if one of them is faltering, I've got the others to kind of pick up for it. But things always work out. So if I had to say one thing, is just push through, right? Figure out how to push through. And when I say push through, that doesn't mean if you're tired and you're sick and you just can't function to go to work and push yourself. I realized that I did that many, many times. And I'd go to work and I'd work 10 hours, not feeling well, and I got nothing done. Right. What I mean by that is that when things get hard, you're going to figure it out. Right. Just realize that, things don't always line up the way they're supposed to. And you know what? Had my staff not done what they did, they were stealing, they were living in my houses that I'd let them live in, and they were just doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Had I not fired my whole staff, I may not have reached out to my sister and been like, hey, I am at a low point. I need some help. Can you come help me? And that decision right there completely changed my business. And if I look at other things that happen in my investing career and really just my life in general. When things didn't go well, like for instance, I wanted to be an NFL football player. Senior year of high school, I was probably the best person in the state. Craig Steven, if you're watching this, he may think he's the best in the state. He ended up winning that award because I got injured. But anyway, going back to my glory years. Oh gosh, where was I going this? What was I just saying?
What position were you?
I played running back, defensive back, and kicker. I was all state running back, even though I played half the season, and all city kicker and defensive back. And I did kick returns. Basically, I was on the field the whole time, is what it came down to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I was getting to was things happen for a reason. So halfway through the season, I was having a great year. Everything was lining up. The game before I got hurt, I actually kicked a 61-yard field goal. That was probably my meal ticket.
Whoa.
It was wide right by that much, but it was actually probably good by a yard or two. And had that gone through, that would have probably changed my life too. But again, things happen for a reason. So the next game after that, I ended up cutting on my knee and just snapped my ACL like that. And it didn't end my career at that point. I ended up recovering, rehabbing, played 1 year of college football, and then hurt my knee again. Right. And I don't know that I was devastated at that point in time, but it kind of felt like it was probably the right time to hang up the cleats anyway. It was just, between banging your head up against other people and just what it does on your body. And literally right after that is when I found real estate. Right. And so when things don't line up, just realize there's probably a reason they're not lining up in that capacity, but eventually something good is going to come out of it.
And Tony, I know it sounds cliche when people say everything happens for a reason, but I truly believe it just like you do. I really believe that the sequence of events, when they all occur for a reason. And I can think of so many things this year alone that I'm thinking, man, I almost did this, but I'm glad I didn't because that happened. Right. And so a lot of people get themselves down because of something that may not have happened, but they have to actually reflect on that and think, wait a second, there's got to be a positive to why this didn't happen. There's a greater purpose behind it. And that's why, like you, I believe the same. Everything does happen for a reason. It happens the way it's supposed to. And can we just talk about this roller coaster of a business for a second? I mean, everybody thinks that it is like a rocket ship. Every single day, it's like taking off. It is lunacy some days. It's up and then it's down and then it's really down and then it's really up. And then you have to be able to, when you're at the high point, you have to be able to have that steady mindset to know that if it goes down, you got to be ready. And you have to, like you said, power through it. Power through it means you take it, you learn from it, you sit on it, you capture it, you work with your team, because there's going to be better days. But that the low point is when you learn. And that's that roller coaster, up and down. And it's not pretty, but it's called running a business and life, right? And you got to be able to take it. And when you can take it and you can lead and you can have that vision, that's when you're going to be successful in that practice. So there's a reason that only, what is it? Only 15%, it might be 10%, 10 to 15% of the US has actually owned a business or currently owns a business. I mean, there's a reason for it. If it was easy and everybody could do it, everybody would own a business. But it definitely takes a certain kind of person to start a business, and takes a certain kind of person to continue to run a business for many years, because it's kind of like being in a boxing match. Sometimes you're throwing the punches and you're feeling good, and then every once in a while you just get whacked with a right hook, and you're like, man, I did not see that coming. So. Yes. Yeah. You could be the one throwing the jab, but then also the jabs are going to be getting you, and how are you going to react and take it, for sure. Tony, awesome stuff. I love this episode with you on TV and business. It's fantastic. I know that there could be a whole episode alone again on TV. So love what you're talking about. And I think a lot of people are going to get great value from learning about the benefits and how people can get into TV and what that could mean for their business. At the end of my show, I do a segment called Signature Questions. These are a few questions that I ask the guests that we haven't even talked about or prepared for. So Tony, for you, I mean, you're doing TV, that is your business, but you also invest in real estate, right? What are some of the criteria in properties that you look for when investing?
Well, I'm a little bit different than most investors. And what I mean by that is, a good amount of the population that says they invest in real estate are wholesalers, right? They find properties, they put them under contract, they sell them to other investors like me that fix them and flip them, right? For us, we don't wholesale. Everything that we buy, we take down and we renovate it. 95 to 99% of the properties we take down, we renovate, and we either sell them or we refinance them and keep them as rental properties, right? So our criteria is a lot different than most other people. It's also different than even just the traditional fix and flip person. So for me, Wichita, Kansas, our medium price point is like 180,000, 200,000, somewhere in that range. So it's very affordable. And the cash flow is not as good as it used to be because the prices have gone up and rents haven't gone quite up as much as prices have. And then interest rates are obviously higher than they were, even just a couple of years ago. So for me, we buy distressed properties. And I have a whole formula and spreadsheet. In fact, I shared this with my clients. We do mastermind every 2 weeks, and I shared it with them yesterday. And it's really hard to pinpoint exactly what we're looking for, but when it comes down to it, just has to make financial sense. So our typical property that we buy, we want to make at least $20,000 if we flip it. And I've been keeping a lot of properties lately, and a lot of it has to do with, I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole, but basically when I put together a spreadsheet of all the tax benefits you can get from keeping a property that you renovate, the benefits of having that property outweigh as if I were to flip the property. So what I mean by that, if I make 20,000 on a flip, let's say even 30,000, I pay 50% in taxes. I'm keeping 15,000. By the time I depreciate the property, or do cost segregation, do bonus depreciation, and write off all the expenses I can on that property, my net benefit is actually more than 15,000. So right now for me, I'm actually keeping almost all the properties I buy because of that. And because I've got other cash flow from other businesses. So what it comes down to is just finding a property under value that we can renovate in a decent neighborhood, that makes financial sense. And right now, most of those properties are properties we're keeping. And because we're keeping them, we're able to buy more. So we don't necessarily have to make 20,000 on each property. Even if we're going to make 5 or 10, I'm okay putting that in the rental portfolio, knowing that I get all the tax benefits from it. And then 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, I will have paid the property down. I will have taken more tax benefits from that property, and then hopefully the property appreciated, and then I can do a 1031 exchange into other properties. So that's kind of my reasoning behind the properties that I buy.
Very strategic. It's a really good plan, and it's very dialed in. I feel like you're like, exactly what you want to do when it comes to buying property. I mean, there's a lot of people that start it, they'll go to wholesaling, they'll do buy and hold, then they'll switch and flip it around. But you're like, nope, this is what we're doing, analyzing the numbers, and there's a plan a little bit later on down the road. So awesome. Tony, for you, whether it's TV or real estate, what are the biggest challenges that you face in your industry?
Oh, that's a great question. Honestly, in the TV business, we're the go-to. So like, I'm not too concerned. Like, I'm not saying there's not challenges. Well, actually, I will talk about challenge there. So first of all, we're the go-to. Like, we have the most data. Like, if you go to any agency, they may have worked with one other investor potentially, but most most agencies or even stations are going to be like, I have no idea how to do what you're asking, right? Or not any idea. They'll try and figure it out on their own and may or may not work, right? I think for us, the biggest challenge is that we know TV works and we can drive leads to our clients. The biggest challenge for us is whether they can work the leads or not, right? So when one of our clients comes to us and they're like, man, I've been running TV for 3 months now. We've gotten 90 leads and we've only done one deal. I know that's not a TV problem, right? TV leads are usually higher quality than any other lead. Not saying they always are, but most likely. And if someone comes to us and they've only done one deal out of 90 leads, I know that that's probably a sales problem, right? It's a sales team issue. And we know this because we started listening to our clients' calls and like diving into it, and we realized, yeah, that is the issue. That's why some people don't have good results from TV, and that could be any marketing channel, right? So I'd say that's the biggest obstacle right now on the investing side is just, our clients have to work the leads and do the deals as we drive the leads to them. And then on the real estate investing side, I would say just, consecutive deal flow. I think what most investors have. I mean, we'll find 10 properties in 1 month and then only 3 properties the next month, right? It's just kind of a roller coaster from that standpoint as well. But again, we know how to weather the storm. We've got luckily, reserves that when we have those slow months or, we lose money in a month because we don't sell anything and we have a bunch of properties in the works that we can, weather it. But yeah, those are probably I would say the 2 biggest obstacles, along with just everyday, things that come up that happen in business that you just have to deal with.
And I'd agree with you on ebb and flow. I mean, the market does ebb and flow. Some months are just crazy, and then all of a sudden it's like, what just happened? And then all of a sudden it's like back again. So you just have to be able to weather through that. And we see that on every end, right? Doesn't matter if it's my business or real estate in general. It just happens. And there's always going to be challenges. It's just a matter of just working through them and getting through it. Tony, what would you say is a skill that you are most proud of?
Besides my pickleball skills, I would say, oh gosh, a skill. This took a lot of time, but if I had to say, I don't know if you'd call this a skill. I know. I think this is the ability to figure things out. I think that's probably my biggest thing. I was leaning towards like how to say no to things or how to like evaluate if something is a good opportunity or not. So I'll kind of throw that in there. So it's from an opportunity standpoint, like I said, there's so many opportunities brought at you. And I think a lot of real estate investors, even in the real estate investing business, have this issue where they get a lead and they'll go to every single appointment. In fact, I had a client that said he was doing that. And I'm like, how do you function? Like he was going to every single lead. And he's like, I realized that like 70% of the leads were just over leveraged or in neighborhoods I didn't want to buy. And so just realizing like where to utilize your time. Like I'm very protective of my time. I love doing things like this because I can connect with great people like you. I can inspire an audience to do certain things. Like to me, this is well worth my time. But there's things that I used to do that, man, I just look back and I'm like, why did I spend my time doing those things? And I do an evaluation almost every single day. I'll look at my calendar and be like, okay, do I really need to do this or do I not need to? And you'd be surprised at how many things I cancel where I'm like, at the time, I'm like, okay, I think I need to schedule that. But then the day comes and I'm like, I've got way more important things to do. So either I've got this thing that I try and do every morning. I figure out whether I will do it, delegate it, delete it, or defer it, right? Do it is obviously self-explanatory. Delete it. If something has no impact on me or my business and it's on my to-do list or on my calendar, I just delete it, cancel it, delete it, get rid of it. Defer it. I think who can take this on for me, right? I had a meeting at 8:00 this morning. I usually don't do early meetings. I messaged my VA yesterday and I said, take that meeting for me, give me the bullet points and come back to me. Right. And so I think that is a great skill to have. And then defer. things that are something I know I have to do, but I don't have to do it now. So if it's on my calendar or to-do list, then I'll just schedule it for a month out. And then hopefully like there's a day where I'm just like not nothing to do, but you know what I mean? Like a slower day where I'll just
Right.
take those low level things that I know that I have to do and just bang them all out at once. So I think that's a good skill to know where to utilize your time and how to protect it for sure.
Yeah, you got to call that the 4Ds.
4Ds, yeah. I used to call it the 3Ds, but yeah, it's yeah, 4Ds because part of it is doing. I like the other 3Ds. I don't like the doing as much. I like the other 3Ds, but it is the 4D method that if anybody can do one thing in the morning to help optimize their day, like I have a whole morning routine and questions I ask myself, but if you can ask yourself those questions, do I really want to do this? Can I delete it? Can I defer it? Or can I delegate it to somebody else?
Awesome. Tony, awesome stuff right there. Love it, man. And you're right. I love doing these episodes because I feel like I've learned so much more about you and what you get into and the things that you look for in business and TV than just even seeing you in Tampa. Like that's the cool part about these episodes. I hop off and I'm like, I just learned so much more about this person's business and them than just seeing them at one event.
Oh,
And so
100%. Yeah.
it's huge. I love that. I love that. Well, Tony, it's been a blast being on this episode with you. I do a segment at the end of my show called Final Words, Final Thoughts. Anything that you want to leave the audience with a lasting impression, those final piece of advice, final parting words. So as I do, final words, final thoughts, Tony Javier.
I'll reiterate a couple things. So, and then give you a new thing. One is things are going to work out, right? Things are always going to work out. Two is, I would say, again, protect your time. Just utilize your time because we only have one thing that is really the most important, and that's time, right? We only had such limited time. So you have to look at yourself and say, in this short life, do I really want to spend my time on XYZ, right? And then, oh man, I just lost my train of thought on the third thing. It was really good. Let me think about it here for a second. It was, oh gosh, I can't believe I just blinked on it. It was really good. I promise you, it was really good. But yeah, just think things always work out, guys. Like, just put time and effort into it. Surround yourself with the right people. Do the right things, and things are always going to line up. Like whether. Oh, I know what it was. It was vision. It was vision. Okay, so if I look at everything in my life, everything, almost every big thing in my life, moving to San Diego, owning an airplane, living in an ocean view home, driving the car that I drive, like a lot of the big things in my life started with a vision. So I would recommend at least once a year, if not once a quarter, sitting down and writing the biggest goals that you think you could ever potentially imagine that could happen, and even some that you think are even far-fetched. So I did this 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I did a dream board, and then I did what's called a Dream 100 list. And I just wrote down everything that I could think of that I would want to accomplish in my, kind of like a bucket list in a way, but a little bit different. And a lot of these things I thought would take me a long time to accomplish. Some of the things I already mentioned, right? And a lot of them started happening within a 12 to 24 month period. Literally moved to San Diego. I met my wife, which is a whole nother story, how I met her at Tony Robbins. Like that's a whole visualization. I could do a whole story on that as well that I won't get into. So if you really want something, write it down, visualize it, think about what it feels like and what it looks like for it to happen. And it's weird how things just start lining up. It is the craziest thing. If you haven't watched The Secret, watch The Secret. That's kind of what they talk about a lot, is just how to manifest things and just believe in them and visualize them. Obviously, you have to do some work, but man, I think that's one of the most powerful exercises you can do, is just sit down and write down everything that you think that you want to accomplish, and literally things just start lining up to make it happen.
Love it. Tony, so much great advice and experience that you've been through. And I'm really honored that you got to share that on the show tonight. Tony, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. We've made sure that all of your info is going to be on the Chirons right at the bottom of the screen, how people can get in touch with 10X TV, how to find you guys, how to level up your business. And thanks again so much for coming on the show, man. Really appreciate you and always love seeing you at family.
Oh, dude, I appreciate you too, man. Literally, out of everybody in the family, like, there's like a handful of people that I'm just like, dude, I just love I mean, there's obviously a lot of great people in that room, but there's like a handful of people that especially just bring the energy, and you're one of them, dude. So I just love seeing you. I appreciate everything that you do. And if you guys are not following Al and you're just hearing this for the first time, you guys need to listen to him, because he's full of passion, full of energy, and just love everything that he does. So appreciate you, man.
Means a lot, man. Thank you so much, Tony. Really appreciate you. And we will definitely catch up soon at the next family, or maybe some event near you. Who knows? Sounds good, man.
Sounds good, man. See you soon.
All right. Keep in touch. Take care. All right, everybody. You heard it from Tony Javier himself from 10X TV. Again, like we talked about in the beginning, 10X TV has been a huge thing, a lead source for a lot of investors. And a lot of people are always looking for that next marketing channel. So, we've talked all about direct mail, PPC, inbound leads, PPL. This has been a big one that a lot of people have been focusing on. And that is one of the reasons having Tony on is huge, because this is a big, big industry. So if you missed any of the episode, go back, check it out, watch it. You don't want to miss it. And of course, you can find all of our content on the Al Nicoletti Show. If you just scan the QR code right on the bottom of the screen, you'll find everything from the show to all the probate content that's out there. You don't miss it. And we will see you next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.